I think we're a species that not only has the distinction of being able to stand up and look at the stars, but also of giving each other permission just to do nothing at all, just because we're complicated creatures and we have to get it together to figure out what to do with ourselves. That's just part of who we are. Two worlds and one mission. Let me give you a thought exercise to start out. Read along if you like, or just listen to me talk. Think of this narrative, imagining the landscape of Mars. Humanity will utilize the best engineering and human resources available to survive and belong in a new world, unlike anything humans have known. On this world, which feels strange and less hospitable to human habitation, people will urgently build and sustain habitats, and this need will drive development of technology to tap reliable sources of energy and materials from the land, wasting as little as possible. And on this unfamiliar world, people will find ways to protect themselves from harsh conditions while innovating new ways to secure food, water, and shelter within a habitable range of temperature and atmosphere. And because this world will be less biodiverse than humans have known, our need for biomes will drive people, as never before, to steward a thriving environment to live in. As humans seek, sustain, and protect life anew, they'll commit themselves to securing an environment for enduring communities, staking their future on that commitment. Now let's pause. I want you to listen to that narrative one more time. Only this time, imagine not Mars, but familiar landscapes on Earth that you grew up with, but perhaps beset by drought or extreme weather events causing food shocks to the environment. If you're on the coast, imagine the sea level rising a bit, and lots of people dislocated and relocated. In other words, come home. And listen to this one more time. Humanity will utilize the best engineering and human resources available to survive and belong in a new world unlike anything humans have known. And on this world, which feels strange and less hospitable to human habitation, people will urgently build and sustain habitats, and this need will drive development of technology to tap reliable sources of energy and materials from the land, wasting as little as possible. On this unfamiliar world, people will find ways to protect themselves from harsh conditions while innovating new ways to secure food, water, and shelter within a habitable range of temperature and atmosphere. And because this world would be less biodiverse than humans have known, our need for biomes will drive people as never before to steward a thriving environment to live in. As humans seek, sustain, and protect life anew, they'll commit themselves to securing an environment for enduring communities, staking their future on that commitment. And now think a minute about how you feel having Mars and Earth as venues for the same story. It's a bit unsettling, isn't it? But I think it's also an opportunity, an unexpected one, for a new and different kind of partnership between environmentalists and space advocates. Back in 2010, environmentalist Bill McKibben coined the neologism Earth, E-A-A-R-T-H, to describe this tougher alien world that we're all living into. And in fact, environmental activists and policymakers now think in terms of coordinating operations within limited windows of action, fueled by intense urgency, even desperation, but the space exploration advocates already know a great deal about how to cope with that emotional and pragmatic terrain. Time-sensitive windows require more than stoic endurance and stamina in the face of delays and stepbacks. Environmental stewardship, like space exploration, is future-oriented. Therefore, it desperately needs inspiring hope and courage. And impatience to reach desired goals and desperation to stave off worst-case scenarios are not enough for eagerly and cheerfully facing Earth's future. A sense of mission based on real and pressing shared needs is required. Think of it as being at a juncture that no one expected. Now, I know there's a familiar rhetorical habit, pitting space exploration against problems right here on Earth, probably since the first rocket went up. I think it's running out of steam. I get that impression from the panelists I've heard this weekend and the speakers. Because right now, humanity has problems right here on Mars. Our here has gotten bigger. People refer to space, not like outer space when they did when I was a kid. And as a new problem right here on Earth, climate change has made us all emotionally and culturally alert to dealing with the unfamiliar and less predictable environment. So the old fight between right here and way out there probably has enough inertia to keep going for a while, but I think it'll fade from credible debates and discussions about climate policy and space exploration. Not only has our here stretched to include problems right here on Earth and on Mars, but I also think there turn out to be very similar problems, remarkably. Here's some similarities. On Earth, climate disruption is going to continue to create rapid and unexpected habitat challenges and crises over the next 50 years. Goods and services have to be provided in new ways within this climate situation. Populations will have to relocate and need protection from environmental threats. And in the same time frame, those challenges have to be faced on Mars to establish enduring settlements. So I think environmentalists and space pioneers can be more than piglets fighting each other to be first at the funding trough. Together they could find ways to meet humanity's need to survive, to feel belonging in unfamiliar environments, make technological and cultural innovations necessary to secure and protect habitat, manage migratory relocation, and handle collective fear while inspiring collective hope. So there are very different situations and challenges and priorities in settling Mars and coping with climate disruption on Earth. I understand. But what I think they have in common is they both need to equip humanity to leave Earth behind in order to survive and belong on a new world. A little digression. Usually when people talk about space exploration or about biology in general, any National Geographic video you watch, nature is all about survival, getting a toehold. It is busy, 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 ceaselessly, desperately so. And space explorationists talk about living mainly in terms of endurance. What can we put up with and still be alive when we come back? That sort of thing. But I think that's selling life short. That's only half the story. The other half, in addition to surviving, is that we figure out what to do with ourselves. We figure out how to belong someplace. And in the process, together with other life, how it can belong. And that's quite an achievement too, as we're finding out where life turns up, where no life belongs, at least in human terms. Now, what do I mean by leaving Earth behind? That has different but related meanings, I think. And it is a psychological and cultural loss that's borne by anybody contemplating a one-way mission to Mars. But we forget that the earthbound are dealing with a kind of Earth loss too. We have irretrievably lost our stable, human-friendly Holocene version of Earth, the Earth that cradled our history, is simply gone. But we can pine for that world, maybe clean and regreen our environment. But we're now in a tougher and somewhat less user-friendly world. Happily, space exploration has long rehearsed, trained, and emotionally prepared humanity for the prospect of leaving Earth behind and living successfully into a future in a new world. Cultural coincidence? Maybe. So which new world do you think requires more hope and courage? Settling Mars? Or surviving and belonging on a tough new Earth? My point is that when millions of people vicariously identify with human space explorers, they're also going to be seeking answers to their own earthbound dilemma, becoming reconciled to leaving Earth behind and living in a new world. And I know that in our hearts, reaching for the stars and embracing the Earth feel very different. For a long time, people dedicated to one venture or another have at times ignored or derided the other as a waste of money. But I think the turf war has fewer and fewer working scientists to fight it. Whatever their research specialty, they know that science and technology don't respect any cultural or vocational boundaries or any imaginary line drawn between everything beneath and beyond Earth orbit. Newton shattered the duality of laws governing Earth and heavens. But our feelings are slower to give up that imaginary barrier. And that's a deeper gravity well, I think, than the one that challenges rocket propulsion. So, if you've left Earth behind in different ways, how do we do justice to this politically and culturally? I thought we could have fun with this and imagine maybe defunding, rebranding, and merging those aging bureaucracies, NASA and EPA. Put them together into one agency, maybe a joint venture in which we're all stakeholders. I call it HEIMA, H-E-I-M-A, for Homeland Earth Investment for the Martian Anthropocene. Or if you prefer, Homeland Earth Investment for Mars Agency. I'm indebted to Siegel Ross for the word HEIMA from their 2006 documentary about performing live concerts throughout Iceland. Appropriately, the frozen basaltic Iceland highlands resemble Mars more than any place on Earth, and American astronauts have long trained there. Think of it as a joint venture or a merged agency that could coordinate economic funding, scientific inquiry, or maybe a super social media platform, something even bigger than Mars One. But whatever the structure, HEIMA would invest in the means for people to survive and belong in new and unfamiliar terrain. The projected time frame to accomplish human settlements on Mars happens to be the window for mitigating, adapting to, and protecting our future within Earth's unstable climate. Call this tight and urgent shared focus a cultural coincidence, maybe divine providence, maybe just what happens when people put things off too long. But I think it's an opportunity. It'll link Mars ventures to our culture's pressing needs in new ways, becoming reconciled to what we've lost while surviving and belonging in a new world with hope and courage. I'm aware of the time. I'm looking for my signal back there. Now, I don't mean by two worlds, one mission that environmental stewardship and the settlement of Mars are identical or compatible ventures. The hazards are quite different. The priorities are quite different. I just mean that we have the opportunity now to face these two developments with the same ethos. Sustainably live off the land, deal successfully with scarcity, with the minimum of waste and toxins, while stewarding biomes in which we and other life can survive and belong, and fortifying our endurance and stamina with inspiring hope and courage. That a tougher world isn't cause for despair. Think of it as a merger. Well, are mergers a good thing? They don't always work. So I'll leave you with an analogy. Have fun with. Diane Francis recently argued in The Merger of the Century why the United States and Canada should become one country, that those two nations are already integrated extensively, culturally and economically, and they both profit by making it official. Canada's natural resources could be developed with American capital and expertise. Employment would increase. Arctic contenders such as China and Russia could be kept at bay in a melting Arctic by a North American military presence. As far as I know, no think tanks are working on this. There's not a hue and a cry for it. And how you think about the idea of merger really depends on the hopes and fears that brings up in you. So by analogy, what kind of hopes and fears do you recognize about the prospect of environmentalism and space exploration joining forces? You could say that, well, this is mixed, it's confusing, it's risky. They're too different to combine. Or you could get emotional, appropriately call it disloyalty or even treason. We can't turn our backs on Mars. We can't abandon the Earth. Would plans for missions to Mars be muddied or diluted or swallowed up by our environmental squabbles and preoccupations? Or on the environmental side, would caring for Earth be abandoned when people start reaching for the stars? Or could you shrug and smile and say, hey, what took you two so long? As you might have guessed, I'm one of the smile and shruggers. Despite different motives and priorities, environmental stewardship and space science have been quietly integrating extensively and in depth across disciplines and technologies for decades. We can give you examples of that. Most of you here could give me lots more. It's a partnership that's been long in the making. And I think that climate disruption has done us a favor of focusing our attention on our shared and timely need to become reconciled to what we've lost as we learn to survive and to belong in new worlds. It's one mission, but I think it's big enough for two worlds. Thank you. Look forward to your questions. Pondering. Yes, sir. No, you're first. You're first. That's an empirical question. We have to see how different audiences respond. As I say, they're still extremely well integrated, practically speaking, across disciplines, yet they don't always go to each other's conferences or identify with each other's concerns. And ironically, they find themselves, in some respects, at the same juncture with similar problems. It just hasn't quite hit home yet. And I don't know if that's good news or bad news, but I think we should make the most of it to make it good news. Any other comments? Okay. Philosophy. They get it. That course always enrolls the first day it's offered. It's like in the last 60 years we've grown up with these twin siblings, these two scientific ventures, space exploration and environmental awareness. And of course, they've been related since the beginning. I mean, you couldn't have modern environmental science without those hundreds of eyes in the sky. So that's not really in question. It's just that they don't think of themselves as being on the same page. They're like jealous siblings. And I think it's time for that feud to come to an end. The students get it. They want to see connections wherever they can because they know that these have to be integrated. And my short response to that, really short, is that the place where environmental science is most critical and the margin for error is so small as beyond Earth orbit. That's important to keep in mind. Anything else? Well, thank you very much.